Sending gnomes to their homes.
What?
Make little gnomes out of construction paper.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
That's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
Nice. Katie and I are trying to come up with an idea. She suggested a day where we help them create their own creatures.
Oh, nice.
Which sounded fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna see how it goes. Because 2 hours, we're just gonna test it out. Because I don't know what the focus time is gonna be.
Okay, great, Jackson. The live streaming is now running. I will share the new link with the students.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's 1 million.
Sorry, man.
I'm sorry.
I got you. I'm sorry.
You have to move. Vamos. Okay. Is it working? Streaming?
I think that they had to refresh the YouTube link, but it'll be back on soon.
So let me know when it's back.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Done?
Not sure yet. I think Layla's taking care of it.
Hello, Leila. How are we doing? Thank you. It's running now. We're
Oh, okay.
done.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Vamos. So far, so good. It's working well.
Yeah, real well. So far
Come
away.
on, you can do better than that with lemonade and bagels.
Daniel?
Okay.
Daniel, I don't have your voice.
Oh, really? Oh, you can't hear me?
Okay, this is very fine. This is an interesting
Oh,
conversation.
jeez.
It looks very subtle changes, but in a way, what we are seeing here is Model B.
Hello?
Vertical
One
buildings.
sec.
They're sort of course, they're lined, the street walls, but they're independent buildings. They're responding to single-use zoning. That is, after they complain about the zoning, this is the area that was kept for reasons.
Orientation massing. Yes, I will update it now.
All these areas of wellness, that's like local, it's full of activity. If you go there at night, as soon as you start using
I know because there's a problem with my computer that I can't do it.
the scale is different.
My computer is
Wait, sorry, one sec, Layla.
One is the the other thing is the different scale of the loss and of the building technology.
I should fix it in the weekends, yes.
In Peruvian modernist architecture, where the streets what it is ability to apply the notion of setback. What was the setback? State lighting, theory, would have more air and light. What was the other
I
extreme?
will put the embedded illustrator in box. Yes.
Oh. No, they were putting the setbacks because eventually, if there were more
And-
cars, they needed more space to enlarge the streets, so the cars could flow. Now, there's a problem when you're doing that in an old city, is that the setbacks, as we see here, occur at different times. So this building was forced with the original setback, but these kept the original alignment, and therefore you have the street alignment moves in and out. So obviously, you're never going to be able to, unless you have eminent domain, and you expropriate. So many cities have destroyed their street walls in and out because of the setbacks. But not only that, look at this. If you're there on the street edge, and you want to walk out and come in, the flow of what we've been doing in the entire city is walking against an amicable sidewalk. But not only that, look what is happening here. If this was meant to enlarge the sidewalk, the street, you can't enlarge it because they're allowing for stupid ramps on the side. So even if the other buildings did it, you can't have an enlargement of the street because you have a ramp and it kills the garage. So there was all these contradictions in what the setbacks were all about. Now, on the other hand, this, like no man's, no person's land of the setback was a great void space until COVID. And when these guys started putting in these restaurants on the sidewalk, these guys said, oh, we have a setback, we get to do it even better. So this is an interesting effect with the setbacks of being occupied by activity, and somehow the life is coming back. Now, if this is legal, the entire block would have been this. And therefore we were in trouble. The city would have changed completely. Are we okay? So again, when do we have a unique situation that the city can tolerate? When does it become the law and it creates an inconvenience? Cool. Visit, I hope we can visit New York in a walking tour. There was something in the 1970s called incentive zoning. What did incentive zoning mean? That, for instance, New York has a great street grid, but if you go to the 6th Avenue or Avenue of the Americas, where the big corporations are, there is a setback, and there's like a front plaza, and it has artwork and fountains. And the idea was the following: if the developer provided for this open space, not walled in, where anybody could go in, they would get more floor area ratio. And of course, New York City, everybody built the maximum floor area ratio, and therefore entire blocks of 6th Avenue have these open spaces. Now, the problem is that usually those open spaces are privately owned public space. That is, you cannot have a wall keeping people from access, but they're still privately owned. That is, that thing is public turf. This thing is private. And you will see in many of these pocket parks, you will see signs: no eating, no smoking, no biking, no kissing, no everything for everything, because it's private turf. And that's another problem, where public space is not entirely that public, because it's highly regulated. And in many of the pocket parks in New York, let's say you had a small lot, which was like the small lots that we saw in New York, where you could not build a skyscraper because you needed a bigger space. If that became a public park, you would transfer the air rights to a bigger lot. And that meant a lot of square footage multiplied by 34. So that meant a lot of bucks. But then that pocket park that was privately owned, at night, they closed it. So you'll have many of the pocket parks in New York that since they're private, you can close them. So not only you regulate the use, at some moment you close it. Yes, yes. You say, that is my lot. I make it a park and I transfer the right to you. So I become a partner to you, or you buy me out. You buy my rights, or I become a partner and you give me shares of your development. Those two A lot of money. And of course, some countries are using this mechanism. Let's say that you have a structure that historically is protected because it has been there for 200 years, beautiful architecture, but it's surrounded by skyscrapers and it's just this little thing there, and people are fighting for it. Well, that's the typical situation in trans development rights. You save the old structure and still they're making money out of it. Exactly. And at the same time, the owner of that says, well, this seed is preserved. Well, why should I lose money when people next to me are making 1,000 times more than me? Guys, I hope you start appreciating, compared to the streets that we walked through this morning, the landscape, Panama, look what's happening here. You have essentially the same width of the car, one lane and a lane for parking. So then you have, and look, and you have the middle. Then you have the service deck. That looks like the end of the car. This is not the largest one. So notice how different it is. It's not a really street where you like to go overnight. And remember, we're working on this exercise of that knowledge plan. If you do the knowledge plan in black and white or something and whatever, the knowledge on that is very similar to the knowledge in this, because the proportion of the public space is more or less the same. Now, when you come on the ground and you realize the impact of the typology and how the edges are treated, then you say, no, it's not the same position. This is not the landscape. Okay? So don't be satisfied only with the general idea of spatial containment and proportion. The movement of the open space, the life and the relation to the edges matter. That's what I'd like to say. And that's a little bit huge living place. Exactly. Here we get the sounds of the city.
The real vibe. Oh, now here we are. It's changed a little bit. Welcome to downtown Philadelphia, the financial district. Lots of money, lots of good outfits, very little culture.
I'm dead at night.
Dead.
Dead at night. Okay, so here you have a typical example of how zoning changed the scale of the city in one of the major corridors. This is Market Street. Market Street. You can imagine that these were hubs of commercial activity because it went from the heart of the city to the two rivers, to the Delaware and to the Schuylkill. You come here at night, it's completely dead. So in a way, it's a transition between Center City, and then you have another couple of blocks of financial area. You have the Vine Expressway, that's another cut in the city, and then you come to the Northern Liberties, and the city picks up again in the grid. I've had this vantage with this. This is a new invention. The bike lane, protected bike lane, which of course New York was. But look at the flow. There's not really much traffic ever in Market Street. And you have parks at either side. And of course, you have the city hall. I don't know, did you visit the walking tour? Okay, we can go back there. And that is a big difference of what used to be to the old. I have this idea that maybe you could redesign this and make it a green corridor like middle, 2 lanes, no car spots, but green this thing and do something in the center corridor because the edges are so bad. So maybe you have some amenity in the middle, you know, and maybe you have some of these restaurants or something.
Oh, remember, there's also a trolley and a subway right underneath.
Underneath it. So how much can you green? But for instance, if you see the Rambla of Barcelona, and if you see the Paseo del Prado, which is one of the main streets in Havana and Cuba, they have infrastructure below. But the thing is risen about 3 steps, and that allows for the green roof, and it allows for planting. So there are ways to turn around. I have this case. Where do we continue?
Dilworth or Fairmount?
We can go to the Comcast Tower, or we can. Yeah, we can't hear.
Should we do a little test here?
Are you muted?
No, I'm not muted.
And they cannot hear for how long, we don't know.
Okay, let me try.
Oh,
Testing, testing.
hello, is it working or not?
They just missed my voice. That's what it is.
Hello,
Hello.
hello. How do you know?
Maybe they'll text us.
Oh, let's see. Did Marissa have the adapter for the?
Oh, do you have a lightning port or the USB-C?
Yeah. I've got the lightning.
Yeah, she
All
has
right,
the C.
listen, we lost the sound of some minutes ago, right? So what can we do? This is terrible. So Jackson, he says, leave the meeting and join again. Lyman says.
Okay.
It was pretty good. I was following you on YouTube. I saw everything.
Okay, so all this explanation of the modern zoning and the setback and hello?
Hello?
Is it better now? No.
Is she connected? Is he connected?
That's what I'm trying to.
Maybe that's my problem.
My name's Sade.
But it was working before Daniel
They're
stopped.
getting it. Okay, they're getting the sound. They're getting something.
Tell her or tell him to do the recording. I can't see anything.
You can't see anything.
Oh, I haven't turned my video on yet.
Okay, because he hasn't
How about
turned it on. Hello, how about now? Hello.
No, no sound.
Nothing. Hi, can you see us or not? Hello.
Testing.
It's good.
Let's just go.
Apparently, one person said it's working.
That counts for like 12.
Hello. Hi, guys. Can you hear us?
Lydia can see and hear.
Okay.
Olivia says they can see and hear. Hello, Olivia.
Hello.
Walking forward from the millions of miles away. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Who would have known?
Well,
It'll be way cooler.
a year ago, I had a studio.
Yeah.
We were 20 students attend
Yeah.
of 3 different departments.
Yeah.
4, in fact. People have even of historic preservation.
Yeah.
35 in Venezuela and 35 in Mexico. And we're dealing in sites in Venezuela, Colombia, and Mexico. Wow. With walking tours like this.
Look at this square. There's a great beer garden here, though. I will say that.
Hello. Are we okay? Venezuela, Colombia, and Mexico. Wow. With walking. Thank you, Lila. Four, in fact. People are even
There's a great beer garden. Yeah.
35 in Venezuela and 35 in Mexico. And we're dealing in Venezuela, Colombia, and Mexico. With
We're
walking.
not going to City Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. We're gonna go down the parkway to it.
Okay, guys, hello. Talking about how infrastructure affects cities. As you know, that thing over there is Reading Terminal Market, which was let's cross. This is rather sad. Okay, so infrastructure. You have the traditional capital, political capital of the United States, Philadelphia, before Washington, and you have the economic capital, which is New York. So of course you have an important rail line, which is a Pennsylvania Railroad from New York to Philadelphia, the two main dominant cities. And of course, New York is towards the north. So you have the rail line coming in from the north over Philadelphia, and they are arriving at Reading Terminal Market, hitting Market Street. And of course, for several miles, the rail is going through the city. And then we'll see the operations, how they invented to berm it up so you would have the grid under the rail. But the idea was to bring the trains as close as possible to City Hall. Eventually, that line was not enough in the capacity, and so they changed the mobility system. They created the new lines, and the new line coming from the north to 30th Street Station at the other side of the river, as you know. And then you have feeder lines that work in the opposite direction. From the station, you have the subway, you have the commuter rail, and then it goes and turns north. Trying to say is that this, which is Market, what was JFK? What is it? Market. Just got
18th and Market.
this is JFK. This is JFK. Market is the other one. This is one of the regional rail alignments runs under these buildings. So you have a mobility system that goes directly into the station. If you take the Scepter line and you go to New York to Trenton, you take this at the station, and that is running under this. So it's coming here and then goes to the station and then moves north. So all these buildings that you see here are under the mobility system. So this typology is designed to navigate the mobility system. Well, and you don't even imagine that you have these rails that could divide it. So here you have a clever idea where you have rails and you don't even can tell that it's got. Now, aquí. How many people have been in the here in Comcast? No. Uh-oh. Okay, I hope they let us into the Comcast Plaza. I'll see on this side. This was a project designed by the architect Dobbin. Until they built the second Comcast Tower, it was the tallest building in Philadelphia. Now, the landscape is designed by Olin Partnership, by Professor Olin and Cindy Sanders. And as you know, about 80% of the personnel at Olin are fantastic. And I wish Cindy was here telling us a bit the story of that. But Olin, as a good, Stubbins, as a good modernist, he wanted a plaza which was completely open, bare, to in a way glorify the building and enter directly from the street. And of course, it's not the most amicable street in JFK. So what was the proposal here? And it took months of discussion between the architect and owner, was A, to create these planting areas to raise the plaza and create some sort of protection with the beer gardens against the street. So what you're creating is alley of trees, the different grade, ramp accessible, accessible. The restaurant, the fountain is creating a barrier towards the street. And then you start moving into the tower. That was the old move. The other interesting thing, and that was work between the landscape architects and the building, is that you see that you have this volume, this atrium, which is what 10 stories high before you go into the tower. The atrium is creating an entrance to the rail line, to the commuter rail. So here you have building typology that's accommodating an entrance to the rail and a public space. Well, I don't know if you've been here. I hope they let us think it's something funny. It's full of us. We can't even enter the atrium. Okay, well, guys, this is fantastic. This is rather interesting. It's closed because of COVID, but if you get down, look at the rather beautiful texture on the walls, and you can barely see it until you come closer. Is that you have the elevator shafts there, and when you enter, you would usually see that the surface looks like the wood, but look what's happening there. It's actually the biggest plasma screen that exists in the United States. And so look, it looks like the wood effect now.
Yeah, I don't
The
like
planning,
it,
but it's really a plasma screen. And then you have this programming of events, of sports, nature things, and whatever. And normally you see the steps, that is the entrance to the commuter rail. And what they would do is that usually at peak hours, 4 or 5 o'clock, they synchronize and they speed up the music and the images as people are running into the subway, into the commuter rail. But what is beautiful is that sometimes they're dancing, their world natural sites, whatever. It's never the same program. It's fantastic. So I hope you can see it someday. And then you have this.
Yeah, they have those weird sculptures. I'm not a fan.
Which I'm not a fan. But the plasma thing is great. Look at the resolution when it turns black.
Oh, wow, look at it.
And then you have people dancing from one to the other. It's really fun.
Oh, boy.
You know where I hope we can have time to make it?
Where?
To the, what do you call it? The rail park.
Oh
Which is
yeah,
now high-
over in Chinatown.
Yeah.
I for my city planning class last semester, we did a land use survey of all of Chinatown and went around and surveyed every single building, like what the uses were. And
And did you cross over to the rail side? Or
yeah.
So you're a dual degree.
Yeah.
I happen to like the city planning department very much.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. What concentration are you in?
I think I'm going to do HCD. That was the first class I've taken, but I think next year I'm going to get more into like workshop and other classes and stuff. So,
You know, and I teach, like, for instance, my next semester, this one,
uh-huh.
the studio, although I have about 4 or 5 slots for
Yeah.
landscape architects, is based in city planning.
Oh, cool. Nice.
I'm
Yeah.
running a studio in Paraguay.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's what I
And-
really like about Penn is they do the cross-disciplinary studios.
So the 701 studio is based in planning,
Uh-huh.
and the 702 is based in landscape.
Got
But
it.
it's open to both departments.
That's awesome.
Do you know Professor Eric Guerra?
I know of him, but I haven't had
He
a.
is the transportation concentration.
Uh-huh.
And he was my contact. You know, I'm supposed to be the big Latin American worker,
Yeah.
but in this case, I did not have anyone in Paraguay. But this guy did, a former Penn student,
Yeah.
planning student. And that's how the studio is happening.
Gotcha.
And we're working with the municipality, with the Department of Transportation, and the local school.
Oh, that's sweet. Nice.
Did you come to Love Park with the other professors or not?
No. Yeah. There's the art museum down there.
Okay, who knows the story of the mall? Why does this happen? Hi, Liz. Two interesting happening that are creating wealth in this city. One being the capital of the Industrial Revolution, and as you have in many industrial cities, Glasgow, Barcelona, Philadelphia, you usually have a very wealthy industrial class, and you have a working population. So you usually have social disparities. Well, the very wealthy Philadelphians, a part of this industrial revolution, would travel to the motherland. They would travel to London. They would go to Paris and whatever. So, you know, Europe has always been a reference for the Americas, and they made it to Champs-Élysées. Holy smoke! What is this? They had never seen an avenue of that dimension. And of course, you know, Champs-Élysées is part of the symbol of city is beautiful. It is landscape in the city. It's a leisure. It's a cafe. It's planting. It's greening. And they said, we're Americans. We can do it. Okay. But Philadelphia, we have our little grid of small streets. We were like the blueprint of Champs-Élysées. So they bought a copy of the blueprint. And they said, oh, and how did you make this? Well, Baron Haussmann, they created, they only demolished 30 blocks, you know, and this is all the Parisian boulevards and diagonals and the squares and whatever. We can do it also. And they realized that Champs-Élysées was anchored in different monuments, including L'Étoile. They say, we don't have L'Étoile, but we have our city hall of French influences. And then they realized that part of the City Beautiful monument was not only creating public spaces, but it was opera houses, it was cultural buildings, it was these icons that were placed in particular locations along these axes. So we have one of them, we don't have to invent them. So what do? We demolished 20 streets of urban fabric in a diagonal like Haussmann, And that's where you have the museum now, which is the symbol of very beautiful intellectual enlightenment. You build it over what used to be the aqueduct. So the Schuylkill and the fall line is right on the other side of the museum. There, now, if you see Champs-Élysées and you see the section of the public realm of Champs-Élysées and this, they're very similar. What they did not realize is that it's not only the public realm, it is the enlarged sidewalks and the street edge, the street wall of the Parisian buildings. That doesn't exist here. And that is what brings life of people living, the cafes, and now all the rich stores and whatever. If you, and this thing here, I know if you, well, you've not been enough, but you have parades, carnivals, and New Year's. This is used for massive celebrations. The Argentinian Pope came to Philadelphia. Where did they hold the main mass for 1 million people? Well, on the mall. So you have these huge monumental, it's the only monumental access of the city. If you come here at night, you will find that the mall is almost dead. And it creates another division between Center City and Northern Liberties because it lacks that edge condition. In fact, I don't know if you guys have been to the Bond Foundation. If you have not, it's a must. It's one of the best impressionist collections in the world. When I came to Philadelphia, the location where the Bonds is now was a juvenile penitentiary. So that gives you an idea that you had all these leftover spaces as the Diana went through the city that were used for parking lots, for penitentiaries, whatever. And gradually the edges are coming back. Now, Love Park. As you know, the symbol was invented here. Everybody in the world knows what the love symbol is. City of brotherly love. What Philadelphia means. This thing used to be a sunken plaza. You would go down about 10 and it was terrible because it was out of sight. You know, when you were at the edge, you could not see what was going in there. And at night, it was rather edgy. But it was tighter. It was more contained. And people, when you were there in the daytime, feel more comfortable than this. So this opened it, and they told the designers, please level it. You will see a similar thing in City Hall Plaza. It was a sunken oval that went down to the subway lines. The two subway lines meet and cross on the City Hall. This was the biggest urinal in the United States. It was a disaster. The stench, the gates that go through the patio at City Hall were permanently closed. Olin leveled it. They got rid of the hole, and then it's active, it's fun, their kids, whatever. So in a way, this is operation. And I know that many schools love to incite the students to go above and below and rooftops and whatever. Not always highlines work. Not always the multi-level sidewalks of Hong Kong work. You have to have a lot of intensity of a city. So try to keep your public space at grade where people can see it. Anyway, this thing is sort of coming together. The trees are growing. There's more containment as there used to be. As you see, the fountains are rather all over the place. This thing was supposed to be a water fountain much higher, but the breeze sent the water all over the place. So, I mean, it's getting there. And all the movable stairs, it's coming back to life. And by the way, just a little history. This guy at the top, of course, is the statue of William Penn. It is about 45 feet high. There are amazing pictures of this guy, of this statue, when it's down at the plaza. You know, before they put it on the top. It's just absolutely humongous. I think it's closed because of COVID, but there's an elevator that takes you to the circular platform. Only 5 people fit at the same time in the elevator. So after you wait in line, you get up there, they allow you to walk around 5 minutes to buy, you go down. But the view is absolutely amazing if they reopen it, try to do it. Now, this guy was designed by a woman. This guy had a son, followed his father's footsteps and became a sculptor and designed the fountain that you see at Logan Square. This guy has the grandson of that. You know who he is?
Calder.
Calder. So you have this famous tradition of Philadelphian sculptors. And we should have a Caldor Museum or Caldor Plaza, and we don't. So anyway, the entire world has Caldor Museum, and we have one in front of Myers.
Cost of making this more of a pedestrian boulevard or not?
That's not, whenever we win the Super Bowl, that was the biggest party I've
And I
ever.
think again,
Boulevard.
and I think that, well, and the other thing is what you do with the edges, because here you more or less have containment and activity. As you start moving along the mall, you feel what's going on. The other thing that you will see is that at some moment under the mall will be crossing the Vine Expressway. You have the I-76, which is on the banks of the Schuylkill. You have I-95, which divides the city from the big Delaware. And then you have the Vine Expressway that connects highway with highway, but it's depressed. But that goes under this. So that underpass of the highway also meant that it was difficult to navigate the edges. So we'll be looking at that. An anecdote, I don't know if it's true or not, that as you see that William Penn, of course, has to face someplace. And there was a big debate in the city that in which direction would William Penn look. So apparently somebody came up with a clever idea of designing a rotational device that would have William Penn, equally moving around. And they ordered this thing to be designed in Belgium. They spent a fortune. Yes, but the council members took the money and it was never built.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so that happens also a very long tradition of corruption in Philadelphia. And now the bad tongue says if you follow the direction of the hand that William Penn is facing, it goes to this rather weird building here, which is the Masonic Temple. And for those that don't know about the so the power beneath the power or whatever. So anyway, let's say that connection. I don't know.
Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories. By the way, this is the administrative building of City Hall. Well, two things. I don't know if you know that in the original plan of Philadelphia, you would have the 4 foundation squares: Rittenhouse, Washington, Logan, and what is the fourth one? No. Anyway, the fourth one is semi-destroyed because it became the exit of the bridge. So it's almost like a rotary. Also, it lost some of the edges and it's rather isolated. The 2 plazas that remain in the configuration are Rittenhouse that we visited and Washington. The third one is where where the center of the plaza is where the Logan Fountain is now. So in a way, they kept the location of the square, but the diagonal changed all the morphology. And the fourth one is the one that's the rotary. Now, the main square of the city was supposed to be this. This was going to be the biggest void. It was bigger than Rittenhouse Square. And as in the Spanish colonial city, Lima, whatever, you have the cathedral, the city hall surrounding the square. They organized a competition, and somebody that won the competition claimed with this clever idea that the building, municipal building, would not be at the edge of the square, but would occupy the void. And then within this, at the center of the building, there would be an internal plaza. And then there would be smaller plazas at the edge. And the jury voted for this project. So obviously it's a symbol of the city. This was the tallest building in the world made of masonry, not of steel for a time. So it became an important city, a symbol of the United States for many times, and a symbol of the power of the people through municipal government. And that's why you see it in the axis. Now, the only problem again was the plaza, the sunken plaza, made in the 1960s. In the 1960s, you're following Corbusian ideas. segregation of uses, vertical city, separation of pedestrians from vehicular flow. So if plazas go down, that is cool because as pedestrian, you get the urinals. Until Olin comes and then green. That's the story. The other thing that you will find is that the internal plaza, which is the heart of the city, where market usually at night it's closed, and since it's all office space that closes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's not much activity. There are no cafes, there are no shops. That's an interesting project. What do you do with the inner court to make it more accessible and lively? Even if this place is now very lively at night, sometimes they close the gate to the internal court. Despite the fact that it was the entrance of 2 subway lines, the main subway lines are these glass things that you see here that replaced the urinal designed by Olin. So most people are using these entrances and not the one that's in the court. So that's a beautiful project. How do we redesign the ground floor of City Hall to make it active? This is the administrative building of City Hall. And again, you have objects in the void. So a typical modernist thing, the building is in pillow tees. You have the piano nobile, much higher elevation than the regular stories. It is part of City Hall. It's a symbolic building. It creates this open space. It's a rather hardscape. As you see, there's a great difference when you're in the sidewalk. You're not necessarily seeing what's happening on the plaza, but it is City Hall. It's one. Imagine if the entire would have a dead city. Okay, so how many of these can we tolerate? How are we doing time?
11:05.
There they are.
Were you here also the Black Lives Matter protest? Yeah. So this is where the National Guard were set up, and this is what it's like when the entire city was closed down. It was a crazy place in here. And there was just machine guns everywhere lined up.
But it was
helicopters too.
But it was powerful.
It was
see,
very
the students out. It was the first time that we that was happening.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think it's a city without any cops. People walking everywhere. So they closed down all of the streets into the city.
Don't do this to you. So as you see, life as you develop, so you work for a particular firm or you get your colleagues and run your own firm, you start developing like a palette of things that you comment in your projects. It's like a signature. I mean, there are artists and there are designers that experiment in different directions. Others, as they become more mature, develop like a certain language. So as you see, certain concept things, creating transition between busy arteries and the inner space, made differences, using very simple grading, general grading, integrating. You're all above 2 subway lines. So there's a mezzanine there. So you're raising these things to allow for planting. If you go to Columbus Circle in New York, with this crazy traffic rotary at the entrance of the park, again, you have 2 major subway lines. So again, you're doing the same thing. You're rising the edge, you're creating for the planting, and you're creating a sound and visual barrier to the inner space to feel more comfortable, and that just blurs the circulation and leaves it out. So, if you guys make it to Bryant Park in New York, in the 1980s, Bryant Park, which is in very important intersections of Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street, two major arteries in New York, and it's behind the big public library. It was called Needle Park. People were shooting heroin, and every morning they would find people dead in this place. And again, visually, it was disconnected from the street. That's why it was used for drugs. That was also an Olin project, opening Bryant Park to the city. When I used to do the New York walking tour with Cindy Sanders, we used to begin there, and it was the first green roof in the United States, because beneath the lawn there are about 7 stories of books of the library. So this idea that you could use the open space for books and then have the park on top of it, they were pioneers in this. Every time I would go with Cindy Sanders, she was furious because she could not see the green roof, because there was something, an ice skating rink, a fashion show, a book show, or whatever show. I said, Cindy, no, don't be angry. They're using it. That demonstrates that the park is a success. Similarly, now we have what is going on here. Skateboarding, we don't know what it is. And then in Christmas time, they have a rather gaudy, tacky,
Ice skating rink.
The ice skating rink is okay. The Christmas fair is really hideous, whatever. But anyway, it demonstrates that this that used to be a dead, genuine space, just with a landscape intervention, look what's going on. Look how beautiful and so subtle the entrances are to the subway. The other thing that the Olin likes to do is, again, combine hard surfaces with soft surfaces, move people, not bad. Eh? Maybe we should come roller skating. What do you think? Maybe because of COVID, but the passage is closed. I invite you to come roller skating, since I grew up in the tropics with no snow.
Mhm.
When I ice skate, it's clearly I'm roller skating. It ain't sloppy, but I can show up.
We're walking through the fountain.
Not bad with the green lawn area.
Yeah. These swings are new too.
It's part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all happening. Yeah. These are really interesting. I like how they're tied up at the bottom too.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
Mhm.
But they're designed for misuse as well. Wow.
also,
Yeah, this is.
because it used to be just a
So do you
plain
think
lawn.
Olin did this as well?
No, this has been
So who's redesigning it? then?
God knows. I guess they're very curious. Back to the power installation. But again, you can move them. People are using them. The landscape change. They adapt. That's good. Nice. Not bad. Starbucks are cost.
Landscapes change, but Starbucks remain the same. Hot take.
Guys, we don't have time to go into all these places, but if you have time and it's Sunday morning or whatever, this is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And on the other side, there was one of the old banks of Philadelphia that happened to have a rotunda. Inspired by the Pantheon, of course, of Rome, and it has a skylight. And the Pantheon, the old hotel, has been recycled. The old bank has been recycled to become the lobby of the hotel. And it's rather interesting. And it's like a nice brunch on Sunday mornings. And if you go in with your computer, whatever, you just sit down, you have a drink or not, and no one will ask you if you're in the hotel or not. So it's worthwhile to visit this place. And it also have great bathrooms if you need them. And that is interesting, being the capital of the Industrial Revolution. And also, I don't know if you know, but you know, the world changed with the discovery of oil as the source of energy, but it did not occur. Oil was not discovered in Oklahoma or in Texas or in Venezuela or in the Middle East. It was discovered in Western Pennsylvania. Aha. So not only you had the money of the Industrial Revolution, in most developing countries, like my country, whatever is in the soil belongs to the state. So if you discover oil or gold, it belongs to the state in your backyard. In the United States, everything that's in your property, you become a Beverly Hillbilly, rich Billy. And therefore, all these rural Pennsylvanians became wealthy, filthy rich because of oil. And they were investing that money. Oh. And that explains why, for instance, if you go to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, it was not founded and built by the city. It was built by the rich Philadelphians who had these amazing art collections in their homes, and in a very philanthropic way decided to donate it to the city. So these are things that make the U.S. very different from other countries, where the private sector has a very powerful role. In fact, in city, not in the last Trump era, but doing good things for the cities. Tying connections. In this period of wealth accumulated in the city, you had the first banks in the United States. There's a full collection of banks that developed from the late 1800s, the first idea of banking, into the 1900s, the 20th century. And of course, these banks are these traditional neoclassic banks. We might visit a few. The banking world changes with internet, the connections, the way bankings are made. You need other types of facilities. You need internet installations. And many of these banks were not functional anymore. So what you do with 20 of these amazing neoclassical banks, they're empty for 20, 30 years. And then people start discovering, lobbies of hotels, fancy restaurants. I hope we can visit one in the neighborhood. It was bought by Temple University. It was abandoned many years. It was restored by the law school of Temple. And what they do, they use it is for a mock-up of juries. This is where the students practice how to handle a jury. So there's this whole generation of these buildings that are being recycled. So that's another. What do you do with the heritage of the city? And you just can't say it's historically protected and then you don't know what to do with it. Who runs it? Who does the upkeep? You have to start thinking. We'll be going down to the Navy Yard. How many of you guys have been in the Navy Yard? Okay, we'll go again. You saw the old buildings where we're building the ships. There are companies there, Urban Outfitters are there. So you have to envision how you recycle your buildings that were part of a particular era as you give them new uses. Another interesting thing. What do you do with the abandoned rail line? How many people have been in the rail yard park here? One. I think we have a little energy, we can make it.
It's pretty close.
So there's your old bank converted into a lobby.
Thank you.
How do you smoke without getting killed?
That's the hard.
Where to light changes.
Oh,
We're gonna do something completely illegal, so
buckle up.
we did not take that.
Nice.
This is how you do it in Delhi. How many of you guys have been in here? Nobody? Let's go. You. Going back to Mr. Panere's lesson. So you have the tracé. Look at the dimensions of the street that now are familiar to you guys. These are many lots. Somebody bought up 40 different lots to build one operation, which is one of the first department stores in the United States. One of my friends. And now it's amazing. So you have a change. The grid is the same. The lot assemblage are modified, and the technology. Not only is a very interesting commercial and office technology. You have no apartment, it's an office space, and the department store. I think it was welcome. I'm asking you quiet. You need that now?
Morning. How's it going? Now we're in a department store.
This is my time to remove all these things. They have a red carpet. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it's something. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very interesting then how real estate changes, logics could change. If we were able to design these unique urban malls, then we went to the suburban shopping was surrounded by so these buildings, they're coming 50, 60 years, they're coming to the end of their life. And luckily, they're dismantling them. Unfortunately, these huge suburban malls cause such an environmental crisis. They're knocking down the trees and whatever and creating a society that's far dependable. But I think we already see a trend. I think they registered about 200 of these malls that already do not exist, and they're being recycled into something else. Mixed use complexes of education, hospitals, office space, even residents. So that's another work that you'll have in your generation.
Now, retro feeling suburban.
I think that would be
Summer look.
I kind of wish we could get Alex. I know he's kind of a divisive
But
character.
he gave a talk about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We brought him. I wonder if the talk was taped. We should ask Weller
Yeah.
because it was a very controversial but a good talk.
Yeah. He's really, I feel like he's a good, like, kick in the pants
Yeah,
for
yeah.
students and, like,
Yeah.
kind
He
of,
really makes people think
yeah, he kind of gets people upset, I notice.
because he tries to be a bit like Lafontaine, you know.
Yeah, he's a little polemical,
Yeah.
but like, I do think he's right though in his perspective. Like, I feel like 90% of our efforts is looking at the city to changing the city, but actually, I feel like 90% of our work is going to be in the suburbs.
So
And,
you might be well done. Thank you.
yeah. And I also, I don't know, I mean,
They have they have codes in the DNA that allow for change. The getting like suburban pattern or the residential pattern are very difficult to be touched. You know, the more you have huge tracts of land, the more
Landscape. Sorry. Whew, back outside. That was a weird detour.
this guy is more conservative. Is the one with his what do you call it?
New urbanism.
New urbanism. He was trying to do that. Unfortunately, the head of new urbanism is like New Victoria. It's huge, but the idea that we're able to create these pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use, socially integrated centers out of suburbia as a framework of change, I thought was brilliant. But he was attacked so badly. So the two enemies are one in. But I think they're after similar things instead of working together. So I would look at some of the one and see how they're working. And just forget about the aesthetics, but the logic of how people are coming together, bike friendly, pedestrian friendly, more socially integrated, mixed use. He's after. So, and then the other thing that Wani is doing is that he says in his like zoning visions, it goes from the center core to a more territorial, rural, productive landscape, and that's it's like a gradient that these little town centers are part of a productive and rural territorial landscape. That is good also.
yeah.
Vamos, which way?
This is about to turn green. An important store in Philadelphia, Wawa. That's where you can get a hoagie.
Bless your heart.
I'm just kidding. Don't go to Wawa. It's not that good. But it's everywhere. All right, I'll flip the camera around. Woo! There's Cat.
I miss you guys. Excited to have you back.
Yeah, same. Oh, there we go. I gotta go back to David.
one of my favorite buildings. Look at the facade that we can never see because the street is so narrow. But look how beautiful the arch is and what are the proportion of the forest. It's really nice. It was abandoned for 40 years. So I want to buy that thing, but I don't have the money. Now, for instance, this whole idea of what is this a main street? No. Well, I mean, you never know. This is what, 13? This could be one of the pedestrian streets of the city. Look at this crossing. This could be fantastic. Samsung, I think, that could be fantastic. Obvious. Look, it's already announcing where it's going. Uh-huh. We have to talk to the city.
COVID checks.
20 pedestrian streets for restaurants and lights.
Sorry.
But
Oh, I was apologizing to her. Just got away from all this.
you just
Now, this is interesting because, okay, it's actually, it's protecting the people at the restaurants, but it's creating a barrier. It's dividing the street into. That's not good either. Get rid of the cars, open it, that's it. Plant trees.
Yeah.
Where is my favorite?
no, I prefer.
The mural movement. Maybe Danielle can tell us more, but you know, in these 20 years that I've been in Philadelphia, so many of these urban voids have been filling in. And this was a part of that time of the 60s where Bacon was trying to re-densify and repopulate the city. So all these used to be homes like these that were being bought by developers and provisionally turned into sufficient parking lots. So these voids were all over the place. Now, obviously, when you knock down homes that fill in the urban fabric, you're exposing the median wall that has no window. So you ended up with this vacant lot and with this black facade. And that was the opportunity that many people of now the famous Philadelphia mural movement discovered to beautify the city. And there are about 300 murals in Philadelphia. Some of them are in like very
very tough or robust urban areas like this, and some still have the parking lots. Many of them are within the communities, and they're designed between the community and the artist, and they have community gardens. So, if you don't have the population to fill in these voids yet, instead of having a vacant lot full of garbage and drugs and whatever, if the community can take them over, even if they're privately owned. The owner rather give it a community use than risk the area degrading. And if some of them eventually, as real estate values change, are built in and the mural's gone. But it's really part of the identity of the city. The full idea.
Oh, they filled in
They took over the
block.
That's wonderful. They took over the LA. Wow. Look at that. Great idea. Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. It's fantastic. Simple, powerful, and you have feeling of it.
How do they get the permits?
Well, first of all, I think that this area, I think that this particular street is bars and things, and there's not particularly people living. So I guess it was easier to negotiate.
That's not really wide enough for a car.
Well, but still the garbage trucks go through.
Oh, really?
But I guess since it was mainly the stores, they said, let's go for it. We need our economy. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It should be extended all the way. Bravo.
Bravissimo.
That was one of my favorite moments of the trip. I have not seen it.
That's cool.
What's about 11:30 already?
I can't see the time right now.
we're calling in United Spots now. So again, what is this? Can we? Pine Street? Yes. So first, you have some of the main, from traffic light to traffic light, the William Penn grid, the continuous grid. And then from that light to this light, you have the urban village, the small scale. I think this is one of the ones that has more character. What I like about it, is that it's so near to the commercial corridors. You're next to the Jefferson Medical Center, which is one of the great hospitals. So you go from metropolitan uses, commercial uses, and you'll see this rather quaint residential character working as a system. So keep that in mind, because if you can manage that in your new designs, well. Again, for instance, imagine this thing here was all vacant lots of the demolitions. So this is urban infill, keeping the scale, character. I guess in
2
the
mil.
1960s, that was $12,000.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at these little tight backyards with these urban ecologies. Beautiful. Not bad. Can it get better than this? No.
Oh, those are really cool.
Ah, ha, ha, ha. This should be the good picture. Cool. And this thing, you know, in all seasons, in the fall with snow, in the spring, it's fantastic.
What neighborhood is this?
It's part of the neighborhood. I don't know exactly what they call this around. And there's so many of these hidden places. Just walk, bike, and discover. But look at this. You could go with it. And right. Keep going down the best street in Philly. Okay, so now you know what these guys are. Huh?
Yeah.
You have variations of the Trinity House. So always the cellar, and then first floor, second floor, and attic. That's one typology. Or you have the full, larger main, intermediate with the main bedroom and bathroom, and the third floor is a full suite. So it's two and a half or full suite. Look at these guys. They bought this one, they integrated to that one, and they have this courtyard. These two models. Again, in the 1960s, you were able to buy a house.
This is really tucked back here.
Magical. And that is part of Jefferson, of the big medical complex, right there. I mean, it's So I guess if you were trying to reproduce something like this in nowadays, you would have to check codes in certain countries. Fire codes. Is this enough for a fire truck and whatever? What do you do with the parking? So the things that you would have to adapt. But wow. There is a guy, I might get you some books. His name is Mr. Samper, S-A-P-E-R. Herman, like German, Samper. He was one of the great Colombian architects that died 2 years ago. He worked till he was 93. He was a very good friend of the Pritzker Prize Indian winner. What's his name? They got the Pritzker 2 years ago. Yoshi. They were very good friends. They were contemporary. They worked on site and service projects together, and so on. Anyway, what did Samper do? That is, you might know, out of Colombia. The Secretariat building, part of the buildings in Chandigarh, in the government buildings that were designed by Le Corbusier. Samper worked with Le Corbusier for many years. So anyway, going back to the interesting of Samper is that he realized that the colonial grid in Latin America of 100 meters, 120 meters, like the Philadelphia grid, was too many car crossings very close. And what he suggested that in the new developments, he uses the grid, but the grid is spaced more like the Philadelphia grid, every 200 meters, 600 feet. And that allows for the feet to be continuous. And, you know, if they could adapt to topography, but one car is going through, like Philadelphia, one direction, the other direction. But within the larger 200 by 200 blocks, he's doing exactly this. And he says that since it's pedestrian, you can fall around, you can make it more irregular, you can make it discontinuous, you can have little plazas and whatever. So this is a guy that is thinking how in contemporary ways he reproduces the city that all the cities are producing spontaneously. What's his name? Samper, S-A-M-P-E-R, Germán Samper. And he has a book called Casa más casa igual ciudad, that is house plus house plus house equals city. And he has a zillion variations of the 200-meter grid, you know, with diagonals, with little placitas, with whatever. The other thing that he's interested in the self-constructed city, like for instance, this area, despite the fact it's being so plain and whatever, is highly regulated. Like if you wanted to have a shop here, it would not be allowed by code. But in his grid, he's understanding that in the barrios, you need a thriving economy. So if people can be selling empanadas and have an internet center and whatever. So in all his developments, they're designed that allows for self-construction and allows for commercial use. Okay, but this is the character that is. Hi, here we are. You must be tired of people visiting your streets.
I'm not trying to be like people are tired of.
Thank you.
Really, actually.
Yeah.
Oh.
Incredible.
Right here is where the front wheel of a wagon.
Would hit
bore
both.
away. No.
And you can see
Here's
on
the
other
front.
side, too.
It is. And then the back of the trail unit there.
And you can see it.
And how do you keep these guys from going on your sidewalks?
Oh,
Well, they're not many.
that's something to try. I mean, if you want to have a contractor, you gotta be somewhat.
Well, you live in the most beautiful street in the city. You know that. Yeah. I live in the second most beautiful one, in Graduate Hospital area,
Oh, really?
Madison Square. It's the entirely pedestrian street.
Oh, how nice.
There's Madison Square, and then there's St. Albans with the film Sixth Sense was filmed. So
You can.
Only
Yeah.
cross
Oh, you're from that. Okay.
Yeah.
of its kind.
Well, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been a nice day.
enjoy. Beautiful. How long have you been here in this area?
Oh, I came to this country in 1968,
From where?
England. And usually there is even Jack flying up there. But the wind had something to say about it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right here waiting for a neighbor to go up the ladder and put it back.
Well, enjoy. It's a gem, really beautiful.
Yeah, this house is James Moore.
Yes.
He did that, and there's a little plaque on the side, almost covered my eyes. He did it in 1986.
Brilliant.
He joined the two houses. That was fun.
Brilliant.
Wow. Cool.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
Enjoy it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
We're filming a little later.
What?
Yeah. That's so cool.
The backyard, roof deck.
How will you with time?
It's almost 12.
It's almost, okay, I think this has been an amazing tour. So we have a few options. One, you have other obligations, dismiss. Option two, for those that want to remain in the tour a little further, we can walk to Redmond Terminal Market and have lunch in the market. You know,